It's impossible to explain the satisfaction, actually the joy I've experienced being a Giant.
Bless it. Thank you.
But did you like it though? Did you double tap? No, I want you to go back and like the picture.
Who in the hell is Mel Kiper?
Welcome to the Pan Am Football Draft Hub. I'm Max Dean, and you can find me on Twitter at Pan Am Football. This is the very first episode of the Divisional Deep Dive series, starting with the AFC South and the Indianapolis Colts. If you like what you see, throw a like my way. Put a lot of work into this, along with the salary cap stuff coming down the line at the end of the week. And subscribe if you want to see lots more content that's just like this. So, before we dive in all the way, today we're going to be focusing on the draft analytics. So basically, we're going to look at the coach, the GM. We're going to talk about all of their draft classes, at least a little bit. Then we're going to talk about some of the analytics that I've put together for their draft tendencies over the last few years. And then ultimately, I'm going to try and show why I think that falls within this category that I've sort of created almost for the Colts alone. I've created or sort of determined 7 different draft strategies, and then there are different styles within those strategies. For the Indianapolis Colts under Chris Ballard, they are the only team that falls under what I call Moneyball, or the NFL version of Moneyball. So basically, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what Moneyball is, in my opinion, in the NFL version, and then sort of run through Chris Ballard's style and show you examples of it, essentially. So Moneyball, it is basically characterized by a little bit like a draft and develop style, but more so focused heavily on trading down, accumulating second-round picks, spending very little in free agency, and finding discount scheme fits to fill in the cracks. The basic reasoning behind Moneyball is that not every franchise in the NFL has the same budget. Now, there is profit sharing, but not every NFL owner has money that comes in outside of their NFL franchise. Some are focused on the NFL and their franchise is the primary source of revenue, and as a result, their bottom line is a little bit lower than other owners who have large business interests that lie outside of the NFL and have a little bit more leeway. The Indianapolis Colts have not generally spent a whole heck of a lot of money, at least compared to the other NFL teams, and they are in a smaller market. And so essentially, to work within that, it looks to me, at least, in my interpretation, that Chris Ballard has found ways to kind of circumvent that. So let's run through and talk about how that came to be. So first off, we have Frank Reich. He came over from the Philadelphia Eagles. His first year was 2018, and he was hired away as an offensive coordinator to be the new head coach after the Eagles won the Super Bowl in the 2017 season. He's had 3 seasons with the Colts, compiled a 28-20 record with 2 playoff appearances and a 1-2 playoff record. The first playoff appearance was 2018 with Andrew Luck, and then the second was just this past year with Phillip Rivers. To me, Frank Reich is a pretty solid to very good coach. I would put him in the top half of the league pretty easily of proven guys. And I would really like to see what he can do with a more settled quarterback situation. So we'll see if that can be Carson Wentz or not. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. There's no way to know for certain now, but I do like Frank Reich. I think he's a plus coach. Chris Ballard came over from the Kansas City Chiefs, where he went with Andy Reid in 2013, and he was hired at the very tail end of the 2016 season, which means he has had 5 true off seasons, 5 total drafts with the Colts. So 2017 was really his start. He's compiled a 32-32 record, so he had a little bit less success with the previous coach to Reich. Same 2 playoff appearances and as well a 1-2 playoff record. Now, Reich seems to subscribe to some analytics when it comes to the draft. He does tend to trade down to accumulate more picks, and while he's not the only GM who does that regularly, he has a very particular style in the sense that he does not value first-round picks as much. Now, there are some teams that don't value first-round picks and will trade them away en masse for veteran players, or will trade them for trade future first-round picks for picks in the moment. That's not really Ballard's style. What he does more so is trade down first-round picks, so either trade down within the first round or entirely out of it to accumulate more second-round picks, which I find very interesting. He's also traded a single first-round pick for DeForest Buckner, which I think was a really nice trade. Maybe, honestly, his best non-draft move. To get a player like DeForest Buckner at that age, for just a single pick, a lot of times you've got to shell out multiple picks. You got to do a first and then a third and then a future fourth or whatever. He got him for a solo first round pick, which I think is really nice value. Then throw that on top of that, the fact that Buckner, he wasn't being traded on a franchise tag or anything like that. He had a year left, which was his 5th-year option. So once you dole out the 4-year contract, $21 million per year as the extension, because there's no sunk cost for the Colts, you're actually really giving him more like a 5-year contract for about $19.3 million, approximately. In a couple of years, when he's still in his 20s and playing dominant football, that's going to be a really good value contract. So, in this case, trading away a first-round pick for an established, very good veteran, not additional picks, no future picks, to get that deal done almost immediately. Almost everything about that trade and extension was done picture perfect. There are ways that you can get better value, maybe getting a guy who's already had signing bonus money from another team, whatever. I mean, there are better ways, but I really liked what he did with that. So let's look at his draft classes. 2017 is first. He had Malik Hooker as his first-round pick. He was a pretty high pick out of Ohio State, but ultimately, none of his top 3 or 4 picks in this class really did a whole heck of a lot. Hooker played a fair amount, but he had injuries, and they did not pick up his 5th-year option. So he's currently a free agent. He has not even signed with another team yet, so he might sign before the season, but we'll see. Quincy Wilson, Terrell Basham both ended up, I think, with the Jets, if not another stop on the way there. And I don't remember much ever happening with Zach Banner. But Grover Stewart, he ended up signing a 3-year contract worth about $10 million a year earlier this year, so he's going to be with the Colts for a while longer. And then Marlon Mack has had some really solid games for them, and I think after tearing his ACL, I believe it was, last year, he is back for 1 year, I think. And so those were the 2 most impactful players from this particular draft. In terms of style, you see a push for a good number of picks. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 picks, good, not incredible. But the fact that you got 8 picks and they're all within the top 5 rounds, that's solid. Then this was a big year for Ballard. 2018 gets Quentin Nelson after trading down in the top 10 from Notre Dame, best guard in the NFL. Then Darius Leonard, linebacker from South Carolina State in the 2nd round. One of the best linebackers in the NFL as we speak. On top of that, starting right tackle in the 2nd round. Then Kamoko Toure and Tyquan Lewis, both rotational defensive linemen with his other 2 second-round picks. Then, in the 4th round, Nyheim Hines, who is a tremendous player. I mean, he's not a superstar, but he has taken over games at times. And it's not something you can expect from him all the time, but if you go up against a team that doesn't have an answer for him, he can have a great game. And for the 4th round, that's fantastic. Now, a couple of things. I feel like we're really delving into his true style now. 4 second-round picks. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 picks in the draft. That's great. On top of that, let's look at a little trend that he starts here that he'll continue for a while, and I'll point it out when he does. And that is selecting multiple players at the same position in the same draft. And basically what that does is it hedges your bets. So, Darius Leonard in the second round, let's get a couple more linebackers. So, Matthew Adams, Zaire Franklin in the 7th round. Let's go running back Nyheim Hines, 4th round. Turn around, take another running back in the 5th round, Jordan Wilkins. Doris Fountain, wide receiver in the 5th round. Turn around, Deion Kane, wide receiver in the 6th round. So, essentially, and even Kamoko Toure and Tyquan Lewis are a little bit different, but both have positional versatility on the line, and I think you could kind of say the same thing for them there. Now, the reason I like this so much is because by accumulating so many picks, you basically double swing at every position. Could you imagine? A lot of teams they go through a draft with 6 picks and try and hit one player at 5 or 6 different positions. Well, what if you just double the picks and take 2 players at every position? You're drastically increasing your odds. You can't guarantee a hit, but when you crush it with Quentin Nelson and Darius Leonard, then everything else becomes gravy, And if those guys had busted, you'd still have a starting right tackle with Braden Smith, rotational guys with Toure and Lewis, and a good addition to the backfield, Nyheim Hines. So this is something I really like, and this is kind of part of that Moneyball mentality. Get as many players as you can for as low cost as possible. And drafting a guard in the 1st round, can be risky because it doesn't necessarily, give you the best value unless he's an all-pro stud, which Quentin Nelson is. 2019, not quite as impactful in terms of superstar players, but, you got some more good ones here. So 3 second-round picks, a third-round pick, a couple of fifth-round picks. Now, let's look back, and we've got another example of the trend I mentioned earlier. Ben Benogu, linebacker, 2nd round. Turn around, Bobby Okereke, linebacker in the 3rd round. Kari Willis, linebacker in the safety in the 4th round. Marvell Tell, safety in the 5th round. So, and not to mention EJ Speed, linebacker in the 5th round. Same thing. You want to get better at a position. Don't just take one guy and hope it works. Diminish your risk. So I would say that the 2 most impactful guys in this class so far would probably be Paris Campbell from Ohio State in the 2nd round and Kari Willis from Michigan State in the 4th round. Neither are superstars, but both have been contributors, and I like what they've brought to the team, especially where they're selected. 2020 last year, we've only gotten to see these guys for 1 season, but it looks like another great draft class. 2 second-round picks, a third-round pick, 4th, 5th, and then 4 6th, and then don't forget on top of that, you have DeForest Buckner with your 1st-round pick. So I would say the 2 most impactful were Jonathan Taylor and then Julian Blackmon in the 3rd round. Blackmon has been one of the best rookies in the NFL last year, and I think it went probably a little under the radar for the NFL at large just because the Colts are not a huge market team, and he wasn't a huge name coming out, but Utah had an awesome defense in 2019, and so the Colts capitalized and grabbed one of those guys. There were a few guys who came out and were quite good from Utah last year. And now, just to close out this most recent draft, I'm just going to throw the 2 most impactful as the first 2 picks, just because we haven't seen them yet. But Kwity Paye and Deo Odeyingbo, both edge players, both big guys, both with positional versatility. Again, you're seeing a lot of positionless, in quotes, defenders that the Colts have been drafting over the past few years. I mean, Darius Leonard is one. One of the more high-profile ones, and Kwity Paye as well. He was used a lot on the interior in Michigan, even though he's certainly best suited to the edge, in my opinion. Now, that's another example of doubling down on a position. to kind of hedge your bets. So let's jump into the analytics and kind of see what we see. So remember, premium positions are dictated by how they are paid in the NFL market. So offensive tackles, wide receivers, and quarterbacks, they would be premium positions on the offensive side of the ball. There's a clear difference between what they earn and what players at the interior offensive line, running back, and tight end earn. It's just a fact. Defensively, you're looking at interior defensive linemen, edge players, and cornerbacks. And then for non-premium, you've got safeties, linebackers. Essentially, positions that are valued as premium are paid for basically two reasons. One, because you cannot find them easily in free agency or even in the draft. And then also because they are the most impactful, potentially. And oftentimes both. Quarterback being the best example of that. So what we're looking at here are, in the first round under Chris Ballard, what percentage of those first round picks were used in any of these categories. And I'll just point out some of the ones that stand out. The one thing about using first round picks is sometimes they can be skewed in terms of the Colts only have 3 first round picks that I can use in this analytic, even though they've been under the same management for 5 years, because they traded out of the first round with 1, and because they traded 1 for DeForest Buckner as well. So 1 pick constitutes 33%, and so it can make these numbers look pretty large. But I would point out that they do spend more on defense with their first round picks, at least according to what they've done so far. And I think, interestingly, coming up next is really what will show a little bit more of their hand. Now, premium rounds are picks or rounds 1 through 3. They're the backbone of how you build your franchise. Not to say that rounds 4 through 7 are unimportant, but this is really your bread and butter. Now, because the Colts have made so many picks in the second round in particular, when you add the first round, all the second round picks, and the third round picks, you have a much better sample size. So, how much have they invested in premium positions? 59% of all their picks. That's tied for 12th. And remember, this is only among the 23 teams that have had at least 3 draft classes under the current management. Defensively, they've invested 71% of their picks. That's first in the NFL. So they really have put a lot in on defense. And then, the defensive line and defensive skill positions both are ranked very highly. 41% of all of their first, second, and third round picks have been invested on the defense, on the defensive skill positions, that is. So clearly, defense has been a priority for them. When including all rounds 1 through 7, they're tied for third most in defensive skill investment at 38%. So that would be categorized as safeties, linebackers, and cornerbacks. When you keep hearing Colts have one of the fastest defenses in the NFL, the Colts have an incredibly fast defense. Why is that? Well, they're investing a lot of picks there. They're drafting positionless players with great athleticism, and they're drafting multiple players to try and make sure that they get at least one good contributor at the position that they're aiming for in each draft. I really like that a lot. They're 10th on D-line, so that's, in the higher percentile, and then throw on top of that you've got DeForest Buckner with one of those first-round picks as well. That's a lot of investment, and I like it. The one thing that they have not really invested in as much as I would have liked is quarterback. Even with Andrew Luck, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more investment at quarterback, just because it's such an important position that you never really know when you're going to need more. All right, and the final analytic is one of my favorites. It is total picks per draft. 9, that's tied for 5th. So they definitely make a point of having a good substantial number of picks every single draft. And then here's the funny part. First round picks, 0.6 per draft. That's 21st in the NFL. That's almost dead last. for all the teams in the 23 that we're measuring here. And that's because they just don't value making first-round picks. They don't not value having them. They value having them, but they just prefer to trade down with them or trade one away for a proven veteran and making about half of their first-round picks. And I'm really okay with that if you're doing it in this situation. Picks in the premium round, they have 3.4 of those per draft, so 3.4 picks in the top 3 rounds every single draft on average, and that's tied for 9th. So that's a little better than top half. That's like, lower end of the top half. And then late round picks, 4 through 7, that's 5.6 per draft. That's tied for 5th. And what I like about that is they also tend to have more 5th round picks, some 4th, some 5th. And it's not just a whole bunch of 7th rounders, because it's not that that's unhelpful, but it's better if you can get a bunch of those 4th, 5th round picks. They're just a little bit more of a better percentile, a better percentage chance of hitting on those guys. And it's a low percentage chance individually, but when you take multiple swings at the same position, you increase that percentage substantially. I really like it a lot. And then you can look here at this graphic and you can see that there are, 62% of their picks are late round picks and 38% are premium rounds. And I feel like that's a perfectly fine distribution as long as you're having a good chunk of premium picks. So overall, I like what the Colts are doing. They're getting very cheap guys who are second round picks on rookie contracts for multiple years. That allows them to take multiple swings at the same position and put together a really good roster. Now, we'll look at their salary cap situation later this week, and so that'll be all part of this divisional deep dive. But in terms of the draft stuff, it's just a really unique take that the Colts have. And I think that if they continue to have success, and certainly some of that will ride on the arm of Carson Wentz, but if they continue to have success in the trend that they are, other teams will start to mimic this. I promise you that. I absolutely promise you, because it's different, and the NFL is a copycat league, not just in the kind of plays that are run, but in the way that guys do business. And so I think the Colts are a leader in that sense. So thanks for joining, and throw a like, hit subscribe. We're going to be doing this for all the teams. Even if the Colts were your team and you're like, I don't care about anybody else, just see how other teams match up. Just check out how other teams do business. And it'll be interesting, because you might see some things. Just because the Colts do a good job doesn't mean they do everything perfectly. So you might see some things that you like that other front offices do, and you'll start to say, man, I want the Colts to do that too, on top of what they're doing. So I find this stuff fascinating, and I think that you guys do too, because that's what people seem to have been coming for. So I appreciate the support, and we'll be back soon with more AFC South content very soon.